What is up, guys? Fato82 coming at you with a raid cam from the US Rustopia server. CML and allies have banded together to raid a compound here with a massive tower sprouting out of the middle of that compound. Now, it's safe to say with the amount of pissed off people here at the raid, in terms of the raid party, that probably the guys with that tower are not the most popular group on the server. Usually when a tower of that nature is constructed, lots of griefing happens from that tower, and it's safe to say that probably quite a few of these people have a vendetta. They've probably been sniped multiple times from that tower. Taking a look, guys, you can see that this tower is unnaturally large. As of right now in Rust, you can no longer build towers like this, but as of the previous wipe cycle, there were some kind of glitchy mechanics with the stability mechanics, and you could kind of get towers to increase in stability as you went farther up into the air, and this is an example of how that could get sort of out of control. I think we can see that that tower is really impressive looking, but how it probably is a game mechanic that we don't want in the game, because as you can see from the top of that tower, it gives people a really crazy vantage point that probably you shouldn't have. Take note here of the high exterior stone walls and the sleeping bag that the raiders have put in the bushes here. Those high exterior stone walls do allow them to have a position where they can't be seen from that tower. So if they're snug with that wall, the defenders who are in the tower can't actually snipe them from that location. Taking a look inside the base here, you can see that the defenders are gearing up and they're heading out to the fight. They're taking up positions on both that high tower and also in the base itself in preparation for the raid. You can see that a rocket was fired down here, an incendiary rocket, and it's setting fire to the ground and to some parts of the building here that were still twig on that forward operating base. We get some more rocket fire coming from that very large tower there, and as we can see here, as we pan out, this type of tower is absolutely crazy in its scope. A rocket has been fired from the tower down towards that staging base. Looks like it did actually land on that staging base. And the first high exterior stone wall was breached by the raiders. They're now into the interior part of the compound here. They're between another set of high exterior stone walls there, and then it looks like the main base itself will be their next goal at that point. So they're quickly moving into position. CML has enough members here, CML and allies rather, have enough members here to allocate people dedicated to pickaxing through those walls, and also have people on defensive positions protecting those people who are working on the walls with those tools. Now take note here, guys, that this body's falling off the tower here, and there is quite a bit of distance from that body when it first started falling to when it hit that base, and it just goes to show the scope of that tower. They're now inside the inner part of the embrasures there. As night sets in, we can see gunfires lighting up the night sky there, and you can see fire being exchanged between the forward operating base of the raiders and then that tower, which the defenders are using as their main vantage point to see what's going on. You can see a member of the raid party down there is protecting the members who are working on the wall with a saw light machine gun, which is exactly how it should be used. That's a perfect use of that weapon. And just listen to the hacking that's going on that stone wall. There's nothing more that you fear more in Rust than hearing multiple people swinging tools slowly getting through your wall. What you saw right there, guys, was actually some fire coming from another tower across the river towards the CML forward operating base. So that forward operating base was sort of sandwiched there between that massive tower in the main base and then an additional base with another large tower outside the perimeter of that base. Now, it remains to be seen if those are allies or just people who were firing in towards the raid party. You can see here that another high exterior stone wall has been breached here, and they're now in the innermost part of the courtyard here. They only have to get through one other set of high exterior stone walls here, and then they're going to be able to get into the base itself. You'll notice they just blew into an area here with some rockets, so they did pull out some rockets in this location, and they did that to gain access to a building cabinet, so they have limited building privilege in this location, which is going to afford the raiders some options that they didn't have previously. Taking a look back inside the main base, you'll see that the defenders here are despawning their loot. That's what these bags are on the ground. They're also arming the turrets in here, which are going to be able to defend this loot room. This must be their primary loot room. And for anybody who doesn't know, what this means is they're throwing loot on the ground so that if this room is breached, they're anticipating that it's going to be breached, that the raiders won't get much out of it because that loot will despawn, which means it will disappear. That typically is something that happens only in the last moments of a raid, so I think that the defenders are giving up a little bit prematurely in this case. But as you can see down here, the raiders have used their building privilege to put down an auto turret, which is going to cover their back while they chip further away into that main base. That's a good move. Typically, we don't see the turrets used in a forward operating fashion. They're usually in a base for defensive measures. You don't see them in the wild too much, but it's cool to see that. So you can see that a member of the defending party just got sniped there from that tower. And so they're definitely locked onto that tower. They realize that that's their main opposition at this point in time. Panning around the base here, you'll see that there's some action going on over here with some members of the raid party and the defenders between this little hatchway that's this open port here. And the defenders are opening up a doorway to part of their main base there, and they're shooting back out through that port. And it's kind of an interesting cat and mouse game at this point. It's whomever can land those shots, you know, through that port, which is easier said than done, is going to be the winner here. And this is pretty interesting to see. It's just these defenders here who are really holding their position and waiting for those raiders to poke their head through in the hopes that they're going to get a lucky shot. One of the raiders is down here, and hopefully some of his teammates can get there and revive him before he bleeds out. And that was the case, so he's back in the fight. As we pan out here, guys, you'll notice that what separates that main base is another set of those high exterior stone walls. So they're going to have to get through those, and then they can work on getting into the base itself. They've been using their rockets at C4 really judiciously, CML and allies in this case, and that's something that sometimes people will get really nervous in a raid, and they'll sort of blow their load all at once with the rockets and C4, and then find that the raid really slows down. In this case, it's the opposite way. This raid actually lasted for over an hour, guys, and I was able to condense the footage down to show you sort of the highlights of it, the choice nugs, if you will. This is the action in the raid cam, and you didn't have to watch, you know, an hour's worth of pickaxe raiding through a high exterior stone wall. As you can see here, back inside that main base, the defenders are getting a bit nervous here. They're praying to the Christmas gods. Those Christmas items were removed from the game, so this is the last time you're going to see them in a video. Or not in a video, but in the game, rather. And back out here in the compound, you'll notice that some of the members weren't able to authorize on that auto turret before it was able to take them down. So that actually worked against the raiders in that particular case, but in general, that turret is probably going to be more of a benefit to them. Taking a look at that bird's eye perspective, guys, you can see again that massive scope of that tower. It looks like something out of Lord of the Rings, Sauron's tower or something like that. And it is ominous looking. Even in the daytime, it is an absolutely ominous looking aberration existing out of the landscape here. Protruding out of the landscape, rather. So here, the final high exterior stone wall has been pickaxed through. No further rockets or C4 have been used at this point in time, but at this time, the raiders are going to go ahead and they're going to use the rockets and C4 to start making their way into that base. This is go time for the defenders to really pick it up here. It's critical once the raiders get inside the core of the base, and that's going to be a problem here in a moment. But as you can see, they're using the rockets now fully, and as they push into the base here, they're trying to figure out their strategy. Raiding a base, guys, in Rust is a very strategic move. You can see one of the raiders actually just get taken out there. He wasn't communicating with his members, and he ran in front of a rocket, caught one to the face there. But as I was saying, raiding in Rust is a very strategic sort of again, cat and mouse game. You're trying to predict where the loot rooms are, where potential pitfalls or traps might be. And bases can have very creative layouts, and raiding a base is very surgical, and it's a very fun sort of meta to sort of the game of Rust. You can really sort of get into that. It's kind of like raiding a bank vault or something, and you always want to find the most direct way into a loot room, the most direct way in, the most direct way out. And usually that's blowing into the center of the base and figuring out from there. As you can see, they made their way into a loot room on the first floor here, which is probably just some type of materials room. You can see a lot of furnaces there, so chances are this isn't a main loot room. There might be some materials in there, supplies that they might want, but they're going to have to progress upwards into that loot room that we saw with the turrets, where the loot was being despawned. That's where the good shit's going to be. And taking a look up there, you can see that they're trying to make their way up, and they have some more building privilege here because they're able to access another tool cabinet here. That's going to give them some more options with how they're going to be able to ascend this base. And one of the defenders is up here with a shotgun. A shotgun, guys, is just the most perfect home defense weapon in real life, and it just sort of lends itself well to the game also. I like the spread pattern with it, and it's badass to see a homeowner with a shotgun using it. And you can see here that he's reloading, getting back into the fight, but it's very hard with the amount of raiders who are down here on the ground. They were able to overpower him. They were able to get up onto that second floor. So at this point in time, the raiders have control of the first two floors of this base. One of the defenders tried to open up the door and get some of the raiders there, but was quickly taken out. So the raiders are on point with the amount of people that they have here. It's very hard to put one over on them. Due to the building privilege that they're able to get from that building cabinet that they just gained access to, they're able to have some limited building privilege here, and they're building up sort of a makeshift raid tower here, if you will, on the side of the base. They're going to try to get to the top of it and then work their way down at that point in time. That's a good raiding strategy. Typically what raiders try to do is get on top of a base and work their way down. It's typically a more efficient way to get to a loot room, which again mostly are going to be in the center of a base, but sometimes people get creative and do it in many different ways. As we pan out here again, guys, just take note of that massive scale of that tower. It's absolutely disgusting. And as you can see here, that the raiders are making their way into that tower. I was really hoping they were going to blow the tower down just so we could see it fall. That would have been absolutely epic. But instead, they're getting into the tower here to gain control of it. They're breaching the bottom floor here, and they're getting up into the tower itself. It's really hard to translate in the video, guys, but if you're a Rust player, you'll know how intense this is. Rust is a very unforgiving game. So when you die, you go down, and all the items that are on your body are not lost, but you might not be able to retrieve them. So chances are with a raid party like this, you're going to be able to get your items back. But in general, it's a very visceral and intense experience. It creates intensity in the game, unlike other games can do. Games like Rainbow Six try to create that sort of really visceral, intense experience, and Rust just does it better with sort of less systems in place. It's a really raw, brutal experience. But as you can see over here, guys, in that loot room, again, more loot is being despawned, and that's where the fight is really focused on at this point in time. The defenders are going to make sort of a last-ditch effort here to defend this area and to make a dent in the raid party. The raiders have just blown from the top floor right above that loot room down into the loot room. You can see that the turrets here are doing their job properly. They're shredding people as best they can, and those turrets are not to be messed with. They're quite effective, but they do go through ammo very quickly. So you can see that the raiders here are trying to figure out how best to take them out. This one here takes a rocket, and it's done for in a moment, but it took out about 3 raiders before it was actually taken out. Now, at this point, again, it's a very surgical sort of game here where the raiders have to figure out how to drop into this loot room and anticipate where the defenders might be hiding, where the choke points might be, and also have to worry about these turrets, which are really layered throughout this loot room. As you can see here again, we get some nice footage of that turret doing what it's meant to do. And this is the first time that I've caught a raid cam with the turrets operational, and it's something that's very interesting to see. I've always wanted to sort of observe their effectiveness, and I think that some of the ones in here are actually running out of ammo. And if they had had more ammo, I think it would have turned out a little bit differently. The raiders still would have overpowered and gained control of the loot room, but more of them would have gone down. As you can see here, they're really focused on making sure they take out those turrets because they know what a beast they are. So they're focusing all their firing and containing it on the one down here, which is going to be their most direct opposition when they drop into the loot room. A lot of the bullets are hitting actually the shelving next to the turret, so the turret's not breaking apart here as it normally probably would have. The turrets are strong, but they're not that strong to sustain that amount of fire. As they drop down here into the loot room, the other turrets that do have ammo are again doing their job effectively. You can see some raiders falling here. It's shredding through people, and that's exactly what they're meant to do. I can't wait until we see more base defense options in the game. It's going to be something that's definitely needed, and that's going to be a great thing when those systems are sort of fleshed out. Panning back out here, guys, taking a look at the compound, you can see that at this point they've breached sort of the heart of that base. So the base has been overtaken at this point in time. The raiders have done an effective job of getting in there relatively quickly. Again, this raid was over an hour, so I condensed the footage down as much as I could to make it translate effectively and to show you guys most of the action. I really enjoyed filming this raid. I hope you guys found it interesting. I really hope that the clan on here that got raided comes back and gives it another shot. Maybe takes a fight to CML. And as always, guys, really hope you enjoyed it. Fado82, peace.